Hello guys, I'm going to give my opinion on Soul Pendulum. I've been trying it out, and I'm just give my thoughts on it. So I will say that Soul Pendulum does not replace Kendo, and I would honestly say it feels kind of underwhelming. So its attack is not only generic, but the counter accruing is too slow for the attack boost that you're getting. Now, what I mean by when I say that the attack is not only generic, so its effect states that what was it? Okay, there it is. Each time your Pendulum monster's Pendulum summon, place one counter on this card. Pendulum monsters on the field gain 300. So if if you happen to face another Pendulum deck, then you would just boost them as well. Which is kind of strange. Now mirrors aren't too common, so it's not really a big minus to it. The real minus to it for me is the fact that the accruing of counters is really slow for the attack boost that you're getting. It might be good in a dedicated Odd Eyes deck, but I wouldn't run one of it in a Endymion deck unless you're running like a Odd Eyes and Endymion like mixture, maybe. Though I would almost say, depending on your ratios, it's probably better for you to run Institution, but again, that then depends on your ratios. And additionally, since it doesn't protect itself, it's not ideal for the mid-range Endymion, which I will get into later. And for its last effect, where you can remove 3 counters to then Pendulum Summon again, you're probably never going to use it, to be honest. By that point, it's probably better to just keep the 900 attack that you're getting from it. And then, with its scale manipulation, it's better to just use Kendo, to be honest, of which I will also get into later. With another thing with it is that since it's a continuous spell, it does compete with Mythical Institution, or spell and trap zone space, and it's almost always better to have a second institution than to have one institution and then one Soul Pendulum, because the advantage that institution has, coupled with its own protection, makes it hard to justify using Soul Pendulum instead. Because see, in a mid-range deck, you want to only go minus on effects that will help you go plus in the long run, or it has a substantial effect. So for example, Kendo is a +0, assuming you don't summon from the extra deck. And then if he does, or if you do, then it's obviously a plus at that point. But the fact that he bounces himself gives it pseudo protection, right? And then in a deck with lots of 4s and belows, so a lot of low scales, and then him having a 9 scale, that's pretty substantial because that makes him valuable. And to further my point about the going minus stuff, mythical institution, right? It's a when you use it, it's a -1, right? So you have a card of 5, you use it, it's a -1. And then you use its effect to search that turn, right? And then it's a +0, right? It kind of replaces itself, and then as the duels go on, it's going to keep plussing you. And then if you combine it with Abductor, you're going plus a lot, right? Over time, you're going pretty plus. Now, back to Kendo though. Kendo is searchable by Abductor, and by proxy, he is indirectly, what I call it, indirectly searched by Institution. Because you can use Institution to then get Abductor, and then get Kendo with Abductor, and then you have your 3/9 scale right there. And additionally, he is searchable by Electromite. So since I do run 2 Abductors and 3 Institutions, that's 6 cards that can fetch him. So Pendulum only has Duelist Alliance as its only reliable searcher, which in my deck, or at least in this testing deck, I ran 1 Duelist Alliance and then I ran 2 Soul Pendulums. Later I did try cards like Pendulum Impenetrable, which is a quick play which will protect your Pendulum zones. So basically you'll run two Duelist Alliances, 2 Soul Pendulums, and one of those, maybe 2 of those. I don't really find it too useful. Impenetrable, so I'm gonna show you real quick. So it's right here. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good card. I don't know if it's really worth it, only because for a good amount of the duel, your zones are usually empty. Not empty, not usually, you know what I mean though. Like, since they do a good job on getting away from the zones, you can easily just hold the monsters. So like, let's say you use Servant, right? If you were to get Servant again back in your hand, and let's say that you can't use, let's say that you can't use its effect because you used it, that turn already. You can just hold it in your hand. You don't have to place it on the field. Now, of course, the spell counters are good. Don't get me wrong, but do you need the spell counters? Like, basically, in a mid-range deck, you want to conserve things. You don't always want to just blow everything on your field because, again, what if they, Dark Ruler no more, and, use Harpy Feather Duster, right? So, my verdict on essentially Soul Pendulum versus Kendo is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 5 being neutral, and with 5 being it won't really hurt the deck, but it won't really boost it either. I give it a 2, to be honest. It really is underwhelming. The other cards that you could fetch with Duelist Alliance, like Impenetrable, I think would be worth it, or could be worth it. But other than that, for Soul Pendulum specifically, I don't really like it. I tried it, and the thing is that duels just don't last long enough to where you will get this really going. And then if your opponent pops it, then you just went -1. And while you could protect it with like Endymion or Jackal, right, whoever's trying to pop it, you don't want to give your opponent more options to force your negate, right? Because then it allows them to more easily play through your negates if they're able to keep forcing you to use some of them. So that's my thoughts on it.